Talk boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Reigning WBO Cruiserweight Champion Lawrence Okolie posted this to his social media, and it reads, "I believe in my soul. I have a massive chip on my shoulder about things that have happened to me over this last year. I want to let every organization, agency, and person who ever did me wrong to know that we are at war, in and out of the ring. That means I become unified champion. That means I become three-weight world champion. That means I smash through your stable. That means I spend every penny I have on legal battles. That means I bring as much media attention to the wrongdoings of these fools who mistreat and use boxers. Don't they know? Fighters talk." So Lawrence Okolie feels used. He feels mistreated. Specifically in what way? We don't know. We still don't know. This ongoing rift between Lawrence Okolie and Matchroom feels like it's been going on for most of the year. Lawrence only saw action once. Only once this entire year. Earlier this year, in February, the Mikhail Cieslak fight. Since then, all we've heard about is the ongoing rift between him and Matchroom. We even heard that he was approached by Boxer, that they wanted to bring him over, along with several other Matchroom fighters and Matchroom fighters. Some have already crossed over. Lawrence still hasn't. It's sad that Lawrence is still under contract with Matchroom, and he still owes them a fight. Eddie Hearn very recently addressed the relationship breakdown with Lawrence Okolie, who I heard a few weeks ago is no longer managed by 258 Management, Anthony Joshua's management firm. He's not with them anymore. His career very much seems in limbo. There's a recent sighting of Lawrence in the company of Jake Paul for what was the Mayweather versus Deji exhibition match over there in Abu Dhabi, I believe it was. It's really the most we've seen of that guy in recent memory. Lawrence Okolie recently took to social media to vent his frustrations, which many believe were aimed at Eddie Hearn. Can't lie, this year was turning me off boxing. Dirty, lying, narcissistic individuals who quote-unquote run the sport. How I feel right now reminds me that's a selfish outlook. Our fights mean so much more to so many more people than ourselves, Okolie stated. When a fan questioned Okolie's statements, demanding that he spend his time fighting instead of complaining, Okolie warned that additional details will be revealed in the future. I've seen hundreds of fighters come and go, lose, and pushed to the back or out. When it's time for me to speak, I will, and I'm sure you'll have a very different outlook. Well, that's not the first time we've heard Lawrence Okolie say details would come. They still haven't. According to Hearn, there were never any issues with Okolie, but the animosity began when the boxer brought in new members to his inner circle. I've read that book before. Everything was positive until he started hanging around people who have no idea, Hearn told IFL TV. The last thing we ever want to do is go to court with a fighter, but I will never let someone take the piss out of the loyalty job we've delivered for them. What specifically caused the rift? Your guess is as good as mine. Those details have not been made available by either Lawrence Okolie or Eddie Hearn. Just some vague description of the company he's keeping and how they might be influencing. I think Lawrence Okolie is playing this all wrong, and here's why. Why? If you're unhappy with your tenure at Matchroom, if you feel mistreated and used, if you feel betrayed, the sooner you can put distance between yourself and that promotional outfit, the better. But you've created a situation that's drug out for most of this year. A year squandered. Vocalizing this discontent and thereby creating a very awkward situation to where your working relationship with this promoter is on the rocks, but you're still under contract. You still owe them a fight, whether you like it or not. Well, I would say that Eddie Hearn should just release this guy and let him go to boxer or most valuable promotions, irrespective of where he goes. I could say Eddie Hearn should just cut him loose, but what kind of precedence would that set moving forward? Who do you think has the resources for a lengthy legal battle, should a legal battle ensue between Matchroom and Lawrence Okolie? This could become very expensive very quickly. Like I said, I think Lawrence has been playing this all wrong, because if you were unhappy with Matchroom but you knew you only owed them one more fight, it behooved you to keep your trap shut, get that fight over with, and then you air out their dirty laundry. Whatever's going on. Whoever's at fault, whether it's Eddie Hearn or Frank Smith or Lawrence Okolie, irrespective of who's actually to blame for this rift.
You do what you gotta do to get that fight over with, so that you're out of contract with these people.
As it stands, Lawrence Okolie still appears to be under contract with Matchroom, and we know of at least one approach from Ben Shalom, from Boxer, an effort from earlier this year to get Lawrence Okolie on their side of things, but he's not at liberty to accept it until his relationship with Matchroom is over.
There are a lot of Matchroom fighters that migrated from Matchroom over to Boxer. Savannah Marshall, April Hunter, Natasha Jonas,
Chris Billum-Smith, Liam Smith.
I understand that the uniqueness of everyone's particular situation comes into play, but better still,
their migration from one promotional outfit over to another went a lot more smoothly than what we're seeing here with Lawrence.
this is having a negative impact on Lawrence's boxing career. It's in limbo. It's being stifled by this. According to Shane McGuigan, he's not even training with Lawrence full-time.
Rather, Lawrence Okolie is not training with him. It's business as usual for Shane McGuigan and his other fighters that are not entangled in some sort of legal kerfuddle.
So here's what I think. I think if Lawrence wasn't happy, he should have just kept his trap shut long enough that he sees out that one fight that he owes Matchroom, and he could go his own way afterwards.
Irrespective of what's going on specifically, the best thing for Lawrence to have done in that situation is see out the length of the contract, then go your own way, do your own thing.
The way he's played this thing, it's been dragging out for months, and it could drag out for that many more.
You kind of get the sense that Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, they don't want to have to take this to the courts, but
Contract's a contract.
I mean, the way things are now, imagine how awkward it would be for Matchroom to try to promote another Lawrence Okolie fight based on what he's been saying and how he's been carrying on, what he's been insinuating.
All he needed to do was maintain a working relationship with Matchroom for one more fight, just one more fight, and he would have been in the clear.
Like I said, I think he played this thing all wrong. Men's super lightweight news. On the heels of what's supposed to be their rematch in the first quarter of next year, Jack Caterrall is not worried. New trainer can't change Josh Taylor overnight.
You know, it's the funniest thing. It feels like Josh Taylor did change overnight when it comes to that particular fight.
He didn't seem himself, not to me, though Jack Caterrall is not concerned with Taylor's decision to hire McNally. He believes there is not enough time for Taylor to change his style around. I don't know Joe McNally personally, but Josh has been in there a matter of weeks now, and the fight is 12 to 14 weeks away. I don't know if you can change somebody who's boxed a certain way over a long period like Josh has. In my opinion, you would need a few fights to get settled with new methods. When I joined Jamie Moore, it took me 3 or 4 fights before I was able to embed the things I've been working on. I don't think Joe can change him overnight. It will be interesting, Caterrall told Betfred.
You say that he can't change him overnight. You say that he's only been with Joe McNally a few weeks, but he's had most of this year to think about the second fight, to think about the rematch.
I think that's what Jack Caterrall isn't factoring into the equation. Nothing's really changed apart from more eyes being on the fight. I'm very grateful for that, and I've had a lot of support since the last fight. But I keep myself grounded, and I've got a great team, a great family, and great friends around me. They will keep me where I need to be. Ultimately, the fight is going to grow in exposure, and that's the good thing for me. Hopefully, everybody can see me become a world champion, Caterrall said. I do think that the second fight could be bigger than the first, but the fact that the second fight is being billed as a pay-per-view, where the first one wasn't, that the second fight is taking place behind a paywall.
I don't know what kind of reception that's going to get with the Brits. I don't know what kind of reception that's going to get with the fight fans in the United Kingdom, who are set to see 2 pay-per-views.
This is one of 2 pay-per-views Sky Sports plans on putting on in the first quarter of next year. Taylor versus Caterrall 2 and Eubank versus Smith.
Early next year.
I don't know how I feel about that. Does this fight really belong behind a paywall?
It's a great fight. I can't wait to see it.
But I don't know how this is going to go over with the UK fight fans. In any event,
Josh Taylor's going to knock this guy out.
what I think, not because of Joe McNally, but because he's had this entire year to think about it, prepare for it. He's had this entire year to get the fire back in his belly. This second fight means more to Josh than the first one did.
Even though it's not for undisputed, even though there are less alphabet titles on the line, this second fight likely matters to Josh more than the first one did.
Took a lot of heat for the decision in that fight, the first one, and that lit a fire under his ass.
Like I've been saying, Jack Caterrall, God bless him, for the most part, he's been a rather unremarkable super lightweight. Whereas for Josh Taylor,
I scored the fight for Jack Caterrall
because Josh Taylor didn't seem himself, and I haven't soon forgotten that he was coming off an injury in that fight.
but he sacrificed a lot to make this rematch happen. Gave up 3 of the 4 major alphabet titles he was in possession of.
He's only here because he wants to be here. There's only a rematch because he wants a rematch. He wants to send a message.
Underneath it all, he wants to make it right.
Silence the critics, silence the naysayers, and in this sport, well, there's only one way to do that.
And finally, the men's middleweight division, on the heels of his win, not necessarily a big win, over that Korea guy this past weekend, Jaime Munguia called out Triple G Boxing for a May showdown next year.
This is a subject I've broached many times here on the channel. The potential Jaime Munguia versus Gennady Golovkin big drama show.
Jaime wants to do it in May. Based on Gennady Golovkin's current schedule, I believe it's a proposed March return. Opposite the ring, Brazilian unbeaten up-and-comer Esquiva Falcao. I don't think you can do the Falcao fight in March and then return right to action in May.
Not unless they do that Falcao fight sooner than later.
Say, in February. If you were to do the Falcao fight in February, you could then, in theory, move into a Munguia fight in May. Oscar De La Hoya
He's got Charlo on the brain.
says he's confident that they can do a Charlo fight in the first quarter of next year. Very recently, news broke that Ryan Garcia and Gervonta Davis have reached agreeable terms to do a fight between them. And if you use that deal structure as the template for a Munguia versus Charlo fight, then maybe it can happen.
I say maybe because Garcia versus Davis is a much bigger fight than Munguia versus Charlo. They're both decent-sized fights, but one is bigger than the other.
At the same time, the WBO have now officially ordered Janibek Alimkanalai to defend his WBO middleweight world title versus Jaime Munguia next. The parties have 15 days until December 5th to agree to a deal, then purse bids.
Jesus, 15 days? Not even 30?
Is a bottom line. Jaime Munguia is at liberty to completely disregard this order from the WBO, devoid of consequence. They don't have anything to strip him of.
I'm not saying I want him to ignore it. I'm just saying that if he did, what the hell are they going to do about it?
So here you have 3 potential fights, 3 potential opponent options for Jaime Munguia for 2023. Some are more realistic than others.
I don't really get the sense the Munguia people are receptive to a Janibek Alimkanulai fight, though at the same time, given how he looked in his last fight,
Why not take the fucker on?
it's about time that Jaime Munguia fight for a title at middleweight. Something needs to happen.
Something needs to change. If he doesn't, and he disregards this order, the next highest ranked contender is Chris Eubank Jr., who we just talked about. He's supposed to see action early next year against Liam Smith. There's the number 3 ranked Mayrim Nursultanov.
Native to Kazakhstan, just like Janibek. I don't know. I don't know if Mayrim Nursultanov is going to want to fight his countrymen. I just don't know. I don't know.
If he doesn't, ranked right behind him is Matchroom's own Felix Cash. Felix Cash, who is set to return to action before this year is out against an opponent that has yet to be announced. And if he makes it through that fight, you know that Felix Cash expressed an interest in facing Janibek Alimkanulai. We talked about that in a previous video. If he wins his next fight, I don't see why he shouldn't fight that guy. Why not?
Bob Arum did say they've got a lot of money for any prominent middleweight that's willing to share the ring with Janibek.
Felix is supposed to be returning to action in early December on the undercard of Warrington versus Lopez. He makes it through that fight, whoever it's against, maybe he can fight Janibek.
Maybe. Back to Jaime.
I feel like the most realistic option, the most realistic fight for Jaime Munguia is Gennady Golovkin. The problem is the scheduling, the window of opportunity to do the fight. If Gennady is set to return to action in the first quarter or the second quarter of next year, I hardly expect him to go right into a fight with Jaime as soon as May.
And at the same time, I hardly expect that Jaime will sit on his hands and wait for him well into next year. Jaime's gonna need to keep busy with somebody. Jaime's gonna need a fight.
Between Golden Boy Promotions and Zanfer Promotions south of the border, they can conjure up somebody. They can find him someone to fight. It may not be a high-profile opponent, but they can get him a keep busy fight because that's what he's been doing for the most part. Keep him busy, and just
Fighting in keep busy fights with keep busy kind of fighters. Like the guy he fought this past weekend.
dropped him 2 times en route to a 3rd round stoppage. It's a golden opportunity here for Jaime Munguia to get an aging fighter, an aging champion, an aging Gennady Golovkin in the ring, provided that Gennady makes it through his next fight with Brazilian Olympian Esquiva Falcao.
With the other 2 aforementioned fighters, those 2 aforementioned champions, Jermall Charlo, Janibek Okolie, there are network and promotional politics associated with either of those fights. Those fights,
They're not the least bit realistic. Think about it. Jermall Charlo sat out all of this year. He last saw action the summer of the previous year, in 2021. Under those circumstances, do you think his very next fight would be Jaime?
even if you think that Jermall Charlo is a better boxer with a somewhat better resume than Jaime, he's still coming off over a year of inactivity. That's less than ideal for a physical guy, a big young guy like Jaime Munguia.
You don't fight a guy like that under those circumstances. No, you don't. You think about Janibek Okolie, I feel like that fight is a little bit more possible than the Charlo fight, so long as Top Rank is willing to send Golden Boy Janibek.
Because I don't think Golden Boy is willing to send them Munguia.
Been very protective of this kid. They've had him on a split pea and applesauce diet for some time now, and I don't think they throw caution to the wind and just send him over to Top Rank to be cannon fodder for their fighter. The only way the fight happens, as far as I'm concerned, is if Top Rank sends Golden Boy Janibek.
I don't know how likely or unlikely you guys think that is, but that essentially makes Gennady Golovkin the front runner.
Relatively speaking, it does. It makes the Gennady Golovkin fight the more realistic fight of the 3 aforementioned fights.